Hey, what's up, everybody? It's another Monday, and we are ready to jump back into some NBA. Today is kind of a tight day work-wise for me, so it's just me today. Hopefully, though, we'll have Eli or Sam or Phil back on here in the next few days. But I did want to at least jump on and share with you the research I found, kind of what I like for today. It is a pretty big NBA slate, and I think there are some decent spots. So why not share them, right? Last week was a pretty decent week, up about 7 units, but I've been trying to post overall where I'm at, been up and down some for sure. So hopefully we can make it 2 winning weeks in a row instead of going up and down the way I have for the last few weeks. So yeah, it's Monday, March 7th. This is NBA Breakdown. Let's jump into it. First up, we got the Bulls at the 76ers. Philadelphia -7.5, 232.5 total. James Harden should be back for this one. His mysterious hamstring soreness, I think, was more just they're going to give him a break now and then, and they have to give him some kind of designation. So the fact that he's back one game later makes me think that there's not too much to be worried about there. For the Bulls, Vucevic is a game time decision, and it could make some difference. So the Bulls with Vucevic, this happens with a lot of the players that we look at when they're in and out, where they kind of make a positive impact on one aspect of the game, but maybe not so positive on another side. So with Vucevic, the Bulls are scoring 113.7 per game this year, only 103 without him. So a 10-point swing there. And that's over 7 games, I believe, where he's been completely out. They allow 111.44 with him in, only 106.29 with him out. So they've played games where they don't score as much and they don't give us up as much when he's out. Kind of similar when you look at offensive and defensive rating. The offensive rating is 9 points better with him in. The defensive rating is 4 points worse with him in. So, in some ways, it's like the only way that I feel like that matters a ton in terms of the numbers is if he's out, maybe it's a lower scoring game, though Philly is a pretty high powered offense, at least so far with Harden in. And Chicago definitely has the ability to score a lot of points too. So I don't know if I'm reading too much into it, whether Vucevic plays or not in this one. Philly, their lowest scoring game has been 123 when Harden's played since he came over. Obviously, they had a really low scoring game in their last one. What they score 80 something, I think, but that was with Harden out. I feel like they kind of just took a game off, as NBA teams are bound to do from time to time. So I like them to bounce back here and be able to score the ball, especially against a defense that hasn't been very good. Chicago in their last 5 has allowed 118, 130, 112, 116, 108. So yeah, 108, not bad. 112, not bad. But this is a good offense going up against at best a mediocre defense. So I expect a lot of points on the Philly side. And if Chicago's going to hang in there, they're going to have to put up a decent number of points as well. One of the things that's pretty crazy about Chicago is if you look at their games against teams that are in the top 5 in each conference, overall, they're 5-16 straight up against those teams. And I would say that Philadelphia is definitely a team that I have to look where they're at in the standings right now officially. They're second. Yeah, they're second in the East, 3 games back of the Heat, and they definitely are playing that way right now too. If anything, they have the chance to potentially move up if they keep playing the way that they have been. So that, I think, causes problems for Chicago. I think Philly has the defensive pieces to limit DeRozan, probably not shut him down completely, but to limit him. So I really like Philadelphia in this game. 7.5 is getting up, pushing where I'd want to play it. I lined this game around 124, 112. So there you would say there's still probably some value for me in taking Philadelphia. I haven't pulled the trigger on that yet. But I do also like the over here. I think the way that goes down is if Philadelphia plays really good defense and, Chicago isn't able to score enough points to hang in there. But so I lean for those reasons, toward Philadelphia minus the points and potentially the over. Though honestly, I probably like Philly's team total over better than the over for the game here. Either one could be okay. Next up, we got the Hawks at the Pistons. Atlanta is -7. I hope this is working. If anybody's on Twitter and you can't hear me, comment and let me know that, because I'm not hearing it in my headphones for some reason. But it said that my microphone was working. I'm just going to try to double check this quick here. Yeah, it says it's working. So we're going to keep rolling with it unless somebody lets me know you can't hear me. All right, Hawks at the Pistons. Pistons have actually been playing really well since the All-Star break. They are 3-2 since the All-Star break. Man, now I got email coming in. Sorry, a little bit distracted, but that's the way it is today. So Herder's a game time decision in this one. Obviously, it's a wing that they could use if he's out, but probably not a huge difference. Detroit's 4-2 straight up since the All-Star break. That's what I was looking for. They've really been playing well. With Cunningham and Grant and Sadiq Bey, I think this is a fine core of players. Obviously, they're not going to light the world on fire, but I think they do have the pieces to be more competitive through the rest of the season. Not getting smoked the way that they were earlier on, at least not as frequently. On both offense and defense, Detroit's had 3 games out of the last 6 where they were over 110, so scoring that or allowing that, and 3 where they were under 110. So it's been a little bit inconsistent, a little bit up and down, and that's probably to be expected on a team where your best player is a rookie, and he's going to be up and down some. Atlanta's 3-2 since the All-Star break. In their last 10, they're allowing 117.6 points at home and only 109.4 away. So their defense has been significantly better on the road than it has at home. Their offensive rating has been 127.8 at home and 112.3 away from home. So just playing in higher scoring games at home than they have been on the road. They've played better defense and better offense at home. And today they're on the road. So I look for it to potentially be a little bit lower scoring game against a Pistons team that's been pretty frisky here. Detroit, on the other hand, they've been worse at home in their last 10, 109 offensive rating versus 112.4 on the road, and 119 defensive rating versus 112.4 on the road. So yeah, just not as solid for them at home as they have been on the road. So both of these teams kind of going into the situation that has been worse for them in recent times. I line this game around Atlanta 114, Detroit 110. So probably a little bit of value there for me on the Pistons, but I wouldn't say the Pistons are a team that I trust yet. So I haven't made any bets on this game. I guess I would look potentially to the under here as well, as I have it at a 224 total, and it's 229 right now. But 5 points still is in that range of if there are other factors than just my analysis of the data and the matchup that point me in that direction, I would maybe look at it. Trends and some other things like that are things I look at, but probably not strong enough for me to go there yet. But we'll see as the day goes on if that's a spot I end up jumping on. Next up, we have the Rockets at the Heat. Miami minus 14.5. They were up to 15.5 or even 16, I think, earlier this morning. So it's come back just a little bit, and then 224 total on this game. I mean, what can you say about Houston? They are terrible. And yes, they came back and they beat the Grizzlies last night. I was watching that game and tweeted out about the Grizzlies' effort. It was pretty brutal. You could tell that it was just a game that they were kind of taken off. They were still up in the first half despite that. But I think they, for whatever reason, just decided that was a game they weren't really going to try much, and it showed. In this one, I don't expect Houston to accomplish that again unless Miami also wants to take a day completely off. I mean, Houston is number 30, worst in the league in points allowed in the paint. They're number 30 in fast break points allowed. Their defense is just absolutely atrocious. They don't really stop anyone. On a back-to-back, Houston is 2-7-1 against the spread, though they are 9-1 to the over on a back-to-back. So this could be a spot potentially to look at the over or maybe at Miami's team total over. I do think this is a place where sometimes Houston totally craps the bed offensively, and I think it's possible they struggle to get to 100 tonight. They're just hard. I don't really like taking Houston for or against because they're so hard to know what they're going to do, especially offensively. But Miami's on 1 day of rest here, and they've been really good on defense with 1 day of rest. 103.5 defensive rating over their last 9 on 1 day of rest. So really solid. Where Houston, on the other hand, is 123.7 defensive rating on back-to-backs this year. They are on a back-to-back, and a 108.5 offensive rating, which is kind of okay. So both teams are playing slow. That's another thing that I would say could go to what you want to look at in terms of the total here. Houston's been over 105 out of 10, so fairly fast, but they're just a team that plays faster. Miami, on the other hand, only over 103 out of 10 and under 90 in 3 out of 10. So they're a team that likes to play slow. The other news here is Oladipo is expected to play, but I don't know what to do with that. I mean, he's probably only going to play a handful of minutes. He's going to have to incorporate back in. Who knows how he's going to play when he's been out for so long. So I don't really read much of anything into that. So on this game, I mean, I do think this is a place where Miami should crush them, but I don't generally take spreads over 10, and I'm not going to here either. So not taking that. And then in terms of the total, if anything, I would maybe look at Miami's team total, but it's likely just something that I stay away from. Next up, we have the second time in 3 days that the Blazers will be playing the Timberwolves. Minnesota's minus 14.5, and the total's 233.5. The big difference between today and 2 days ago is Anthony Simons. I'm like, who's the one decent player on the Blazers? It's Anthony Simons. He's expected to be out tonight. So now you take a Portland team that's already really bad and you take away their best scoring threat. Josh Hart should be back, and so I would look to DGen Eli or Brian versus the Books, those guys on Twitter who are really good with the player props, Ryan props. Hopefully you're following all these guys that are good at the props. I'm curious what they'll do with Josh Hart tonight because I don't know what else the Blazers have on offense other than him. I mean, everybody else is out. In the last game between Portland and Minnesota, Minnesota came out slow. They came out sluggish, which is to be expected, I think, when a decent team plays a terrible team. And they still ended up winning by 13, even with that. I expect them to come out with a little bit better effort tonight. I expect them to kind of put it on the Blazers early. I think the danger here in terms of taking Minnesota would be that there's a backdoor cover late if Minnesota gets up and even sits people going into the fourth quarter. But this is just, I mean, Portland isn't good against anybody, but I think this is a particularly bad matchup for them. Minnesota's number 5 in the league in fast break points and number 4 in their last 3 games. Portland's number 25 defending that. Minnesota's come around in their last 3. They've been number 3 in the league in points in the paint, which is somewhere where they haven't been quite as strong. So I just don't think there's a lot to say. This is a good team going up against a really, really bad team, maybe the worst team in the league right now. And that's saying something when you have teams like Orlando and Houston, but I wouldn't necessarily favor Portland against either of those. So I think Minnesota should come out and win by 30 in this game. We'll see if they do not, but I did break my 10-point rule. I got Minnesota minus 13.5, and I took that, and I also took Minnesota's team total over. And Portland's team total under, actually. It's at 108.5. And before the last game against Minnesota, which granted Minnesota does not have a great defense, and that's something you have to consider, they hadn't broken 100 since the All-Star break. In fact, they've been like 95 or under, I think, in the other games. And with Simon sitting out, they have even less offense. So I just like Minnesota to crush them here tonight. Next up is the Jazz at the Mavericks. Dallas is -1, and the total is 217.5. Doncic is probable here, so we do want to pay attention to whether he's going to play or not. Brunson and Kleber are both game-time decisions. Certainly hurts the Mavs some if those guys sit, but it's not a backbreaker. If Doncic sits, this is probably something I would stay away from. Utah's on a back-to-back, and it's actually the last game of a road trip for them, a 5-game road trip, which is something I do like to pay attention to when a team is finishing up a road trip and going to be heading home. Utah's 4-5 against the spread on back-to-backs. Dallas is on 1 day of rest, which is a spot where they've been good. Over their last 15 on 1 day of rest, their offensive rating is 117.4, which is pretty much killing it for them. Defensive rating 109.2, which isn't fantastic for Dallas, but we know that lately they haven't been playing defense as well. They've been a better offensive team and more of a mediocre defensive team instead of the lockdown defense they were for a little bit before the All-Star break. This is actually potentially kind of a big game as far as that goes at this point in the season. Dallas is 1.5 games behind Utah for the number 4 spot in the West right now. And so obviously getting home court advantage is something that you would want rather than not having. And so because this is a 1-game swing for whichever team wins, I'd expect both teams to come out and play pretty hard, at least early on in this one. In terms of other numbers, Utah home and away in their last 10, kind of interesting. At home, their offensive rating is 121.8, and on the road, it's only 104. So they have not been as good on the road in that category. Also, defensive rating, 113.4 at home, 118.1 on the road. So Utah just has not been nearly as good on the road over their last 10 as they have been at home. This is another spot where they're on the road for their 5th straight game before heading back home against a team in Dallas that's really hot and playing really well, especially offensively. So this is a spot where I really do like Dallas. I think Dallas has come out and played pretty hard most nights. And if they do that, I think they've got Utah covered in this one. I lined this personally at Dallas 114, Utah 108. So I did make a bet on Dallas -1 here. I think it's a pretty decent spot. And I also took the over. I have this at 222, but there are some other things I look at with trends and different things that are pointing to the over in this game. And my analysis lined up with that as well. So I jumped in on the over 217.5 here as well. A quick note, by the way, these picks, I may put some out on Twitter here and there. Again, sometimes I'm putting out weekly updates. But if you do want to see all my picks, go to Big Tasty Picks on BetStamp, and you can follow me there and see everything that I'm playing. So everything is verified through that site. Next up, we got the Lakers at the Spurs, San Antonio -2, 235 total. Obviously, in the last game, we just had LeBron go off for 54. I'm going to say that he doesn't do that again. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that, well, he obviously is very capable of it. It's not going to be a regular thing with him. He's actually a game-time decision tonight. He's usually a game-time decision, so I'd expect him to play given the fact that he's not listed as out or doubtful. Big one for me is DeJounte Murray is listed as a game-time decision. If he doesn't play, I do not like the Spurs. I don't like the Spurs, period, if he's out. I think I would be hard-pressed to ever take them. However, the Lakers are a team that I am absolutely still on board with fading. I still think they're a mess. I still think their team doesn't fit. They got a win because LeBron went off for 54, which he's just not going to do most of the time. And so I am 100% on board with fading the Lakers most of the time. However, if Murray sits, it's something I want to stay away from. That's where I'm at with this one. The Lakers, since the All-Star break, they've been bad on offense, 111 or less in every game except the last one against the Warriors, which the Warriors have been terrible lately. So they're another team that I'm kind of fading all the time. They've been up and down on defense. 3 games, they've given up 116 plus, 2 where they've had 109 or less. The Spurs are a team that can take advantage and put up a lot of points, again, especially if they have Murray. The Spurs are starting a 7-game homestand here, so maybe it's a good thing to be back at home. They were home one game, then back away, but now they're home to stay for a little while. They've allowed 115 or more in every game since the All-Star break, so that is a problem, but we don't think of the Spurs as a team that plays much defense anyway. One of the matchup things here, the Spurs are number 2 in points in the paint in the league, and the Lakers are number 27 defending that. Spurs are also number 7 in fast break points. Lakers are number 29 defending that. So I think this is a bad spot for the Lakers. I think it's a good spot for the Spurs for a whole variety of reasons. And if Murray is playing, I would absolutely jump on the Spurs -2, whether LeBron is playing or not. In terms of the total here, I lined it at 119, 111, which would put it at 230. So I think there is some value on the under, though it's not something I've played yet, just because some of those other signals that I look at alongside my analysis aren't necessarily clearly pointing in the same direction. But Spurs -2, if Murray plays, I think is a great spot here. I think they could smack the Lakers after the Lakers winning one. Next up, Warriors at Nuggets. Denver -7.5 now. They were at 9.5 earlier, so market said that was too many points. 222.5 total. I mean, I'm not going to spend much time here because basically everybody's out for the Warriors. Clay and Steph are out. Iguodala's still out. Wiggins is going to be out tonight. Green's still out. So it's the B team for the Warriors. In some ways, maybe it's good for them for a game because they've been just freaking terrible with the starters playing. So maybe they're better off having the bench guys in. Maybe it's a better effort. Barton is a game-time decision for the Nuggets. And the Nuggets did just play an overtime game last night, a really close overtime game. So maybe they come out with less energy because of that. Maybe Jokic even doesn't play. Maybe Barton doesn't play. For that reason, with all this crap, this is a degenerates-only kind of game that I would just stay away from unless you just have to have action on every game. And if you do, I have no guidance for you on this one. Last game of the day, we've got the Knicks at the Kings. Sacramento -3.5, 232 total. The Knicks actually won a game yesterday. Pretty amazing. They got up on the Clippers and actually just held on and cruised to a victory. So, maybe things are changing because the Knicks don't really do that, but they did. On a back-to-back, the Knicks are 5-3 against the spread this year, so it's been a decent spot for them. This is Sacramento's first game home after a 5-game road trip. So, again, I don't know too much to read into that. I think the first game back can be a little iffy at times, but also, good to be back for a homestand. That could be a positive thing for them. Hard to read too much into it. So the Knicks allowed 93 yesterday to the Clippers. That was the first time they held a team under 100 in 13 games. They did have that stretch earlier where they were holding people under 100 basically every game. So there's been some negative regression that's happened there. I guess the question is, do things sort of settle into a trend now? They'd allowed 115 or more in every other game since the All-Star break until yesterday versus the Clippers. So I don't expect the Knicks to be a great defensive team moving forward. Maybe they settle back into a spot where they regularly are allowing 100 to 110 instead of such a high number. I'm not expecting it to consistently settle under 100 again. I just don't think that'll be a thing most of the time. The Knicks have been scoring relatively well. You know, it's a short sample, but since the All-Star break, 108, 114, 116. So been scoring the ball pretty well. Sacramento scored 110 or more in 5 of 6 since the All-Star break, but they've allowed 110 or more in all 6 since the All-Star break and 115 or more in 3 of those 6. Looking a little bit more big picture now that we have a larger sample size since Sabonis came to the Kings. They have their worst offensive rating on one day, which is where they're at tonight, 106.9, which is pretty bad for Sacramento. Their defensive rating is 113.9 on one day of rest, and they're playing around a 102 pace, so, you know, relatively fast. Let's see. Yeah, that's the main stuff on Sacramento. They are number 5 in points in the paint this year. So that could be a place where maybe they could get some work done. I don't know. This is just one of those games where I think the Knicks are still not a good team. Sacramento is not a good team. I would say most of the indicators point to this being more of an offensive game than a defensive game. But hell if I know. This is just another one of those tough ones to cap. I lined it at 116, 115 with the Knicks. So for me, the only play there, really no play there. I mean, 2.5 off of where the line is, and then 1 off of where the total is. There's not really value to me in betting anything on this game. But if you see different things, maybe this is a good spot for you. Hopefully some information at least that could be helpful in making the decisions you have. I think there will be some good prop spots out there. Again, that's not a place that I focus on, though I am very interested in what Josh Hart's lines will be tonight. I think that could be a really positive situation for him. But like I've said before, go look at Twitter and follow my man DJ and Eli, Brian versus the Books, Ryan Props. There are others out there that are good as well, but those are 3 that I definitely check in on. So see what they've got today in terms of props, if there's some good spots for you. Appreciate any likes, retweets, reviews on the podcast. And then again, you can check out all of my picks at Big Tasty Bets. Hopefully we can have another good, positive week in the NBA this week, and then we'll look ahead to Saturday, a fun UFC card coming up too. I know that's a ways away, but I'm looking forward to this Saturday, actually, and hopefully we'll have another positive day in the UFC as well. Have a good Monday, everybody. Hope it's a good day for you, and I will see you on Twitter.